All right, quarterback carousel. There are 13 teams that I figured could use either could use a new quarterback or are at least going to consider if they want to go with a new quarterback or not. So I figured let me just go through the list, give them all the quarterback that I think would make the most sense. So yeah, let's just get into it. First up, the Chicago Bears are a team that, definitely there's a lot of talk about what are they going to do. Are they going to keep Justin Fields? Are they going to go with a quarterback through the draft? Do they do something crazy like trade the first overall pick for somebody? I don't think they do anything crazy here. Caleb Williams is my pick. He's the guy who I think I would draft first overall. I really like him as a prospect, and I think that's what they're going to do. Don't pass up. They don't want another. Listen, I think comparing anyone to Mahomes is unfair. Caleb Williams is getting compared to Mahomes. The Bears aren't going to miss that again. That's not going to happen, and I think they're going to move off of Justin Fields. So how about the Atlanta Falcons? What do they do with all of this situation where they don't have a great draft pick, so they can't go out and get a quarterback? They also, I think, very clearly want a quarterback. I don't think there's, some of these teams are kind of stuck in no man's land and might say, well, if it doesn't work out, like, okay, we can ride with what we have now. I don't think Atlanta's going to do that. I think if Atlanta, if it was last year, Atlanta would have traded up to get a quarterback. I think now they might still trade up to get a quarterback. That's not what I'm going to say, though. I had them getting Justin Fields. That's how I have that going. I think they'll trade, I don't know, maybe a second-round pick to Chicago. I think they'll be probably the team that's more willing to outbid everyone else. I think there is things to like about Fields. I'd be interested to see him in that situation. And if it doesn't work out, okay, no big deal. You can go, draft someone next year. That's where I think they go. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, currently, the quarterback on the roster is Kyle Trask. I don't think they want to go with that. This feels like an obvious one to me. Baker Mayfield, I think that's the guy that they end up keeping. I think that, it worked out well. I think they figure out a way to keep him in the building. I think they would probably overpay for him if they had to, and they might have to, but I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think the only reason it hasn't happened yet is, I guess, the one way I could see it not happening is if Mike Evans decided to go elsewhere, does Baker Mayfield kind of look around and say, listen, I liked this last year because it was a good situation. Now, if a different team is going to offer me a bag of money, I might just go there and say screw it. But I don't think that happens. I think he stays. As for Minnesota, the Vikings, another team in a similar situation, right? Have this veteran quarterback who is currently a free agent. Do they re-sign him? Again, yes, I think that's what happens. I think that Kirk Cousins stays with the Minnesota Vikings. That's the most likely outcome. Is there a scenario I could see them letting him walk? Sure, we have seen a team do that with Cousins already. Washington famously did that, but I don't think it's happening. I think they're going to keep him. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Another team similar to Atlanta. The Steelers at least made the playoffs last year, but still not a lot to show for it other than that. I think they want a quarterback. I don't think they look at the Kenny Pickett stuff and say, I think they're ready to move on. Maybe they're probably in the situation that I talked about with Atlanta of like they're in one of those situations where, hey, if we can't make anything work, we'll go with what we have. But I think they're going to try for a big swing here. I'm going to give them Russell Wilson. I've heard this speculated, and I'm sure Steelers fans might be a little bit cautious about it. I think for the right price, this could actually be a good move. Again, taking on the full contract would be a disaster, but that's not happening. They're not, no team is going to trade for the full contract here. What I could see happening is maybe you kind of make a trade with Denver where you give them like a 7th round pick, but then you agree to take on some amount of the money and then Denver pays the rest, something like that. I could see happening, and actually might not be the worst thing in the world, despite the fact that, again, you got to be careful of how much you're paying him, of course, but I thought it was all right last year, so yeah, I think that would be interesting. The Las Vegas Raiders next on this list. The Raiders, again, another team in a weird spot. I think they need a quarterback here. I don't believe they've actually officially cut Garoppolo yet, but they've said that they're going to cut Garoppolo. It's just not official, but it will be. They have Aiden O'Connell, who I thought showed some flashes, but for the most part looked like I don't want to say like a typical, mid-round draft pick quarterback, but he didn't look like a great, mid-round quarterback, right? He looked like a good mid-round quarterback, but I don't know if you want to go into the season with him being your only guy, but I also wouldn't get rid of him. I'm giving the Raiders Gardner Minshew along with AOC. That's Aiden O'Connell, just to be clear on which AOC we're talking about here. Yeah, Minshew, though, I don't know. I can see a team trying to recapture that Baker Mayfield magic. Minshew, listen, I mean, he came damn near close to getting the Colts to the playoffs last year. And while I didn't think he was like a superstar for them, I think he's a quality player and a top 32 quarterback in this league. And I don't think the Raiders have any intention to tank anytime soon. So if you're trying to get better, Minshew's a guy who still is young, still can improve, and I think could give you some, decent play. And hey, if it doesn't work out, well, then you can just let Aiden O'Connell still play. You're still keeping him on the roster. So that's what I think they do. Then we have the Balls, also known as the Washington Football Team, also known as the Washington Commanders. What do they do? I think this is actually pretty clear. I think they go with Drake May. I think that's happening. I just don't really see a scenario where Williams isn't 1 and May isn't 2. Who the hell knows? I never would have thought Trayvon Walker would have gone first overall a few years ago. So, it's impossible to say, but I think Drake May ends up with Washington. The Carolina Panthers, listen, I put them on the list, and I think it's possible they do draft a guy, which obviously they don't have a first round pick. They're picking 33, though. That's still a pick you could consider it with. I don't think that's what they do. They just spent all that draft capital and all that, and DJ Moore to get Bryce Young. I think they try and build around Bryce Young. That's what I'm going to predict. Bryce Young is my selection. I mean, it makes sense, right? I just think that there's too much invested in him. Yes, it might be sunk cost fallacy, and I could see a scenario do they go out and get Zach Wilson as a backup, as just hey, let's have a plan B here? I can see that, but honestly, I don't even think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to get a veteran. I think they kind of almost maybe are a little embarrassed by how Andy Dalton kind of outperformed Bryce Young last year in his small sample size. I don't think that that's what they do. How about the New England Patriots, who are in a very unique situation where they're picking third overall here, but third overall, it's kind of the situation where if Williams and May are both gone 1 and 2, well, then you could go quarterback, or you could get the best non-quarterback available and try to get a quarterback elsewhere. They definitely need quarterback. I'm predicting draft plus Jacoby Brissett. I think they'll draft somebody, and I think that they will sign. Jacoby Brissett feels like a good pick. I think that Jacoby Brissett's pretty good. I'm actually surprised. I feel the league is lower on him than I am. I think he's all right. To me, he's another guy who feels like a top 32 quarterback. But I think the Patriots draft someone. I'm not saying I think they for sure draft someone third overall. Well, I think that's still very likely. I think if they don't, I think they'll probably just get a guy in round 2 or round. I think they'll get some new quarterback in the building this season through the draft, along with signing a veteran. So while I put Brissett there, it could be any veteran, but I think they go after a veteran, but also draft a guy. Whereas the other top 2 picks, I think they're just drafting a guy, and then the veteran is a pure backup. The Cleveland Browns now. So there's 4 teams left. The Browns are a team I put here as obviously they, had a lot of quarterbacks play last year. Not a lot of them played particularly well. I don't think they do anything crazy here. I think they stick with Watson and they keep Flacco. I think Watson's the guy they start the season with. And I think if it goes south like it did this year, then you just put Flacco in and see how that goes. I was not very impressed with Watson last year. Even his quote-unquote good games, I didn't think they weren't like Houston Watson good games. So I don't know what to make of that. But there's so much invested in Watson. I don't see them making a move. But I do think they have a backup plan. And Flacco should be a cheap quality backup plan. The Tennessee Titans are, they're an interesting team because they have a quality draft pick and they could trade up if they wanted to. I don't know if they're going into the season thrilled with Will Levis, as in Will Levis, he's going to be awesome next year, but I think he showed enough. He'll be my pick for them for next year. I think you go with Will Levis, and again, it's one of those things where if he stinks, okay, you can draft a quarterback next year. I know this is a good quarterback draft, but at the end of the day, you're not picking first or second, so the amount of what you'd have to trade up to get a good quarterback would be tough. I'd rather just see what Will Levis has, because he showed flashes last year. Let's see what he's got, and if it doesn't work out, well then we can move on. The New York Giants are another interesting team where they obviously went out and paid Daniel Jones $40 million a year, and it has not looked great. Jones is due $40 million this year, and then they can cut him, and they would still have to pay him $20 million the following season. So then $40 million this year, and then $20 million this season after that. But then they can wipe their hands clean in a contract. So that's probably what's going to happen. So what do they do for quarterback? Do they do anything crazy now? Well, I say no. I mean, they're picking 6th overall, which is when they selected Daniel Jones. I think they're going to keep Daniel Jones on the roster. I think that's obvious. But I think, I think they'll keep him as probably a starter. I'm not sure if they're drafting a quarterback number 6th overall unless a quarterback falls. And who knows? Maybe New England doesn't want to go quarterback. They trade with the Giants. You can trade up and get Jaden Daniels or whatever. But as of right now, I I don't know if it's that. I think they'll draft someone, though. Like I said, like, is J.J. McCarthy in the second round? Is that their move? I don't know. But I think that they won't go into the season with just Daniel Jones. But I also don't think that they're going to just, cut Daniel Jones and be done with it right now. I think they will give him another season. Finally, the Denver Broncos, which I'll be honest, I had a really hard time figuring out what they're going to do. They moved off of Wilson. I kind of would have kept Wilson for another season. I thought he looked all right. Yes, he's overpaid, but you're probably not, but the cost you're going to save by getting rid of him, you're probably going to have to spend on another quarterback anyway, because you're not going to be able to get rid of the entire contract. That's just not happening. But what are they going to do? Well, I'm not sure if this plan would work, but this is what I came up with. I went with Jameis Winston and Jarrett Stidham. Stidham they have on the roster. They could clear up $5 million if they got rid of him. Maybe they'll do that. I don't know if Sean Payton wants Jameis Winston again, because they have worked together. I don't know if that's a pro or a con, really. But I could see with kind of those, again, I don't know how many receivers they're going to keep there in Denver, but with kind of those good contested catch guys, like, does Jameis make some sense? Potentially. I don't know. It's not a perfect fit. It really isn't. I couldn't find a perfect fit for Jameis, and I couldn't find a perfect fit for Denver, so I kind of said, well, how about an imperfect fit here? But that's what I decided to go with for them. So yeah, those are my picks for where I think each team is going to go. It'll be interesting to see how wrong this is in a couple months. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.